Okay, so let's take a look at how to manipulate this sequencer so that we can get more control over our object. So right now we have our object starting from this location at 0 and then animating to the halfway point of our timeline and then all the way to the end, which brings our cube back to the beginning. So we can shorten this timeline, or we can adjust this movement by selecting these center keyframes and move them closer to the beginning. And so now if we were to play this, our cube would quickly move to one side of the environment and slowly travel back to the start frame. Or I could make this platform slowly move to its destination and then quickly move back to the beginning point. Or I could drag this end point in just a little bit, drag the beginning point in just a little bit, and so now what would happen if we hit play, we can see that our platform moves, pauses for a second, moves, pauses for a second. Okay, so that will allow us to control this platform if we wanted this to be a continual moving platform. We have a lot more control over each one of these keyframes using a graph editor inside of Unreal. And we can get to that graph editor inside of Sequencer by selecting this little icon here that looks like a graph. So if I click this option, you can see that I have a graph editor. I can click on cube, and now you can see the animated timeline for this specific cube. So let me move this up a little bit so we can look down on this this animation. So now what we have here is we have keyframes that are showing our animation is moving slowly into the animation, picking up speed, and then as it gets to the end of our animation, it slows down. And we can adjust these and make these move more linear. So I can select on this actual keyframe, and I can come up here to the icons on the top of the menu here, and I can adjust this to cubic interpolation. I can change it to linear. I can hit broken tangents. So if I click on this cubic interpolation, I can grab this handle and adjust it, and you can see my timeline, or my motion line at the beginning or up here in the viewport is moving a little bit. So if I move this graph like so, my animation will actually move further in my environment here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this timeline and show you what's going on. So now you can see that before my cube would stop here, now it actually travels a little bit further because our curve travels further up into our graph. If I adjust this back down, I've manipulated my cube so that it goes back to our initial position. I can actually click on this and move it so that my animation moves to a specific location. We can move this all around in our graph editor, and we have a lot more control over at what point our platform hits a specific location. So we can also right click on our keyframe, and we can change these to break, linear. If I hit linear here, you can see that my keyframe has changed. Now instead of this smooth parabola, it goes into a point. So I can show you, this will actually come in, hit that point, and move immediately into the end of the animation. There's not a smooth transition. And I'm going to do this for all of the keyframes just to show you what's happening here. So I'm going to hit linear on all of these. And so whenever I hit play, this animation will move in a smooth speed. There's no slow in, slow out, it's ping-ponging. So it doesn't feel like it's picking up any acceleration. It's just constantly moving from one position to the next position. So we can select on our keyframes, we can change these to constant, and we'll change all of them to constant. And so basically what this means is that your animation is going to, it will be at this keyframe all the way until frame 75, and then it will jump to its position at the furthest distance. It will remain at that position until the end of the animation. So it's almost like the platform is blinking from one position to the next. So you can see it actually moves the distance, but it doesn't show an animation between those frames. Okay, so let's change this back. We're going to change all these back to auto. So now we have that curvature. And say for instance we want to adjust the height of the platform. We don't have to go back into the keyframes inside of the viewport and adjust it. We can move our animation to the midpoint here, and I'm going to go to location, and I'm going to click on my X so I can see my X location. If I adjust this, you can see that my animation, this is the movement of my platform over the X. So I want to click on Y and see what happens whenever I adjust. So let's move up into the world here just a little bit. So if I move this keyframe in the Y, you can see that I can move my platform, but I want to move this up in the air. So I'm going to hit Z. I'm going to click, and I'm going to pull this up like so. And I'm going to change these keyframes to linear. And then I'm going to hit play. Now my platform moves up and it kind of floats back down. So one of the reasons it's doing the little float is because it's trying to interpret how to move. So we have to actually go back to our transform here. I'm going to change these to linear. This is my X rotation, or my X movement. So I'm going to change this to linear and hit play, and I want to move up here so you can kind of see what's going on. So now you can see that my platform moves, so I can hop on it here, and so now I can ride my platform throughout my level.